Hi there. So today's parenting questions, the first one comes from Sarah, and she says, my child is kind and confident at home, but painfully shy around other people. Should I be worried? Okay, so I think there's a difference between children being shy and children being anxious. And I think, some children are just generally shy. It's just their nature because you get lots of different personalities, you get lots of different temperaments, and some children, they're just quieter. I remember my son when he was young, he was painfully shy, and he would, people would come there and he would say hello. He was always really polite. He would shake their hand, even as a little boy, and then he would just sit there and he would just listen. And then my daughter was a complete opposite. She would just talk and babble and carry on. And the thing about children is that they're all different, right? So, children and adults, we all have different temperaments. We all have different brain styles. We all have different personalities. And I think you've got to evaluate, for lack of a better word, whether this is a temperament or a personality or if it's an anxiety thing. So, if it's a temperament or personality, and temperament just means their nature. Personality is more sort of aspects of your personality, So in my book, Parenting or Emotional Intelligence in a Nutshell, I go through the different personalities and the different temperaments, but you can look it up on Google anyway. And so, how you can tell the difference is that if your child is sort of fearful and scared and shaky and worried and like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody, that could be a symptom of anxiety. But if it's just their natural way where they will listen, they'll sit there, they might not say anything. Usually, if they see the same person over and over, they'll warm up to them a little bit. Um, then that's just a shyness thing. So the first thing that you need to check out is whether it's personality or whether it's anxiety. And if it's anxiety, depending on how old your child is, try and find out what they're scared of. And if they can't tell you, because a lot of children can't express their emotions, what I would do is just sort of help them to build their confidence. You can talk about who do they feel comfortable with? Why do they feel comfortable with that person versus somebody else? Um, did something happen? Does the person come across as scary? Or maybe they represent somebody that comes across as scary. So you've got to have this very open and honest conversation. And honestly, you can talk to children about this kind of stuff from the age of 4 already. So it's not just older children that you can speak to about these things from 4 years old. And the best way to get children to talk, it's so easy to do. You wait for the right moment. So don't do it as it's happening when your child is presenting anxiety or if it's suspected anxiety. Wait until they're more relaxed and then start doing something creative with them. So whether you are playing with Play-Doh, coloring in, baking or cooking, anything like that that keeps their brain occupied because they're working with their hands and stuff, then have a conversation about it. And you'll be so, so surprised to see and hear what comes out when a child will start talking to you about anything and everything when they're actually creatively engaged. So try that, but I would really first have a look and to see if it's just their nature or their temperament and their personality, because some children just are naturally shy and you don't have to be worried about it. It's just they're different to other kids. I hope that answers your question. Um, this question is from Mike. He says, my child lies to me about little things. Are they becoming dishonest or is something else going on? Okay, so when children start lying, there's a variety of things that can be going on. Um, so funny, one of my daughter-in-laws told me the other day of my grandson, he's 5. he's just started lying now as well, and the most colorful lies that you've ever heard of. Sorry, I know it's just funny. I'm just thinking about what he was lying about. So let me explain. There's a few things. So children start using their imagination, and imagination is good, right? We want children to use their imagination. We don't want to always just tell them who to be and what to do. So imagination is good. But sometimes children lie because they want to fit in. Um, for instance, if your child is like at school and they feel different to other children, um, and they don't feel like their life is exciting enough, so they might be in a group of children, right? And some of these children can come across as really exciting and having very vibrant lives and do all sorts of things. The child inside, your child inside, might be going, "Oh, my life is a bit dull," or "What can I say that's exciting?" And it's almost like they want to be part of the gang, they want to be part of the group, and they want to seem as great, especially when they watch how everybody else relates to an exciting child. So in a group of kids, maybe Johnny is saying something and people are like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." And your child might want to fit in, then they could possibly do that. They lie because they also want that same response from other people. They also want to have like this exciting or this great response to them. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is when children are scared to get into trouble. And I think especially if when there's harsh discipline that goes on, children get really, really scared to get into trouble. They don't want to get hurt. They don't want to get punished. So that's another thing. And then the other one is that children don't want to disappoint their parents. There's just this inherent built-in mechanism in all of us that children want to make their parents proud. We just do. It's just this weird thing. Even when you're older, you're still wanting to make your parents proud. It's just built in. And so if they think that you are going to be disappointed by what they're saying or what they've done, if you say, for instance, their marks are not as great and maybe you're really focused on them doing well at school, they're going to lie because they don't want to disappoint you, because they want you to be proud. So the way that you get around this is that don't, if it's dangerous, right? If they've lied about something that endangers them or somebody else, then of course you've got to speak to them about it head on. But do it in such a way where you say to them, "Listen, I know it's not comfortable to tell me the truth. Maybe you're a little bit scared that you're going to get into trouble, but it's better to tell the truth because this person could be harmed or you could be harmed." So depending on what the lie is. But if it's stupid, silly little lies, you could also start having conversations about why we tell the truth, and have that conversation in a moment where it's more like a safer moment, where it's not where they're going to sense getting into trouble. Because when the brain goes into this mode of, "Oh, it's not safe now," they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen properly. They're going to go into shutdown mode, and then it will make it even worse. They'll lie even more to you. So you want to wait for a calm moment, do something nice together, whether you're playing outside, playing with a ball, have that conversation and talk about why it's always important to tell the truth. And sometimes it's harder to tell the truth, but you know what? When you tell the truth, it's better because when you're caught in a lie, there's usually more repercussions than telling the truth. So have that whole conversation with them. Yeah, so, and then what you can start doing is that when they're little, niggly, unimportant lies, um, that's not harming, I would ignore that. And then I would pay attention to when your child is being honest, because you get a gut feeling, right? When your child is being honest, or even if they're doing something that is great, which shows great values, because it's so important for us to realize that values are so important. And obviously, honesty, respect, trust, all of those are values. And start noticing when they are in line with like really good values and comment on them. And when they do tell you the truth, say, thank you so much for being honest with me. I really appreciate that because your child needs to build up trust with you. When you start paying attention to the good values that they're in line with, and you comment on them, your child wants to please you. Your child wants to make you proud. Your child doesn't want to disappoint you. So then they start responding more to that. They start trusting you because you've got to build up that trust with them. Children aren't going to tell you things unless they trust you. So if they're not telling you things early in life, they're not going to tell you things later in life. And you don't want to get to that because as teenagers, they can get into trouble and they're going to need you. So it's very important for you to stress that and say, you know what? Honesty is a good thing because it helps me to keep you safe. And so when you tell me, I can help you. And sometimes, even if it's difficult, you need to tell me. I'm not going to love you any less. You've got to reassure them that no matter what they tell you, they can feel safe with you and that they can trust you. And that's obviously if you're not using corporal punishment, which nobody should be doing anymore because it's very damaging to a child. But what I'm saying is you've got to build up that trust. And so when they are portraying really good values and they're in line with those values, comment on them because that will build more trust. And it will also be like, oh, hang on, if I do the right thing, dad actually approves, or, I make dad proud of me. So I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. But try that and try that for at least 7 to 10 days where you ignore the little lies, but you look out for all the good values and you comment on those. Okay. Um, okay, this one is from Nina. My child gets upset whenever they lose a game. How can I teach them to be a good loser? Okay. And I think what makes this hard, Nina, is that in school, I think maybe not so much as it used to be, but in school, there's always that competition, right? People want to win, they want to be the best. And because there's that whole narrative, especially at school, because of sports, because of awards that children get. And so a child grows up thinking, well, oh, I get all this wonderful attention when I win. And, we all want to feel important and we all want to feel significant. So when they see somebody winning and we all praise and go, yeah, that's amazing, we won, the child wants that, especially if they don't feel important or significant in any other way. If maybe they're adding the importance and significance to sport. So it's very important to have a conversation with your child and say, you know what? Um, Losing is not a bad thing, because some people are better in sports than other people are. Some people are better in maths. Some people are better in languages. And talk about the differences and the uniqueness of your child and their unique talents and, what they do well. Tell you a quick story. I was working with a girl and she was 9 years old. This was quite a few years ago. And she had become really unsettled and agitated. And she came across as somebody who had ADD or ADHD. And the teacher had recommended that she leaves the school and that she goes to a special school. The doctor had recommended that she goes on to Ritalin. It was hectic. Anyway, so her mother sent her to me as last resort. And we were doing some therapy stuff. And I've got this one little, I used to use this one little exercise where I pass a mirror around and I get the child to look in the mirror because I was working with a group of children. And I said, I want you to look in the mirror and tell me everything you like about yourself and everything you don't. And she looked in the mirror and she said, I don't like anything about myself. And she was this gorgeous, lovely little girl. And I was like, why? She said, so I said, why don't you like anything about yourself? And she said, because I'm stupid. And I said, really? Who told you that you're stupid? And she said, my teacher. And I said, what did your teacher say? And it was a maths teacher that had said to her, because she couldn't do maths, that she was stupid. And so what this little girl did was then she thought all of her was stupid, which is a terrible word to use with anybody. And I said to her, okay, so tell me what subjects you like in school. And she told me, and then I said to her, which one is your favorite? Which one have you got your best marks in? And she said, I think it was geography or science or something. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. And I said to her, wow, science. I said, that's amazing. I said, I am rubbish at science. I just do not understand that subject at all. I said, I could never get my head around it. And, in school I failed. I think it was geography actually, because I now failed geography. And she looked at me with these big eyes and she said, really, you failed? And I said, yes, I failed geography. And I really did. I think I got it wasn't even an F, it was an H or something. It was 0 to 19%. And I said, I did. I said, I was terrible. I said, but I was good at English. I really enjoyed English. And then I said to her, do you think I'm stupid because I failed? And she went, no, Miss Deborah, not at all. I said, exactly. I said, just because we don't do well in one subject doesn't mean that we are bad at everything else or that we're stupid. Your teacher was very wrong for calling you stupid because nobody's stupid. I said, we're just different. And some of us are better at one thing than the other. And you know that it changed that child's life so much that she never went on to Ritalin. She never went to a special needs school. She was just uncomfortable in her own skin because she felt so stupid because she couldn't do maths. And it was the most profound change in this child's life. So have a conversation with your child about that and say to them that there's more things that they might be good at, that they can excel in. They don't always have to excel in a game. They don't always have to excel in a sport because if we were all the same, I mean, how boring life would be. So have that conversation around that because I think this whole competitive streak really comes from when children don't feel important or significant and they want to be able to um, not only fit in, but they want that praise. So start praising your child in all the good things that they get right and try help them to understand that winning is not what's important. It's the effort behind it. If you've tried your best, that is the most important thing. And I think schools can be very, very damaging. I cringe every year when you get all these posts coming up on Facebook. Oh, I'm so proud of my child. He got these levels and these marks and those marks, as if that's all that matters. And I think, when you have a child that is kind and compassionate and a good friend and, all of those good values, that's more important. So make them understand that winning is not the most important thing in their life. Okay. I think I have time for one more. And this one comes from Anne. She says, my child says they have no friends and no one wants to play with them. How can I help? Okay. It's hard, isn't it? I mean, loneliness is such an epidemic at the moment. So many people are lonely and really struggling to make friends. And I think especially in school, because schools can be cliquey. Children can be mean, and so it's sometimes hard to connect with other children. And I think the most important thing to do with your child is to find somewhere that they can go to where there are mutual interests. So, for instance, if your child likes playing chess, get them to join a chess club. Um, if they like doing music, get them to go to a music club. Any particular sport, because I think the easiest way for a child to make friends is when you are connecting with a like-minded sport or activity. Um, and I also think try and work on their self-confidence. Find out once again, have a conversation. And I know parents struggle to have conversations with their children because sometimes they don't know how to talk to their child, or their child just shuts down. And I've said this in 2 or 3 of the previous questions that's asked you. The best way to have conversation with your child is when they're distracted. And I mean distracted from their logical brain. So when they're doing something creative, when they're helping you with something, when they're drawing, playing, baking, coloring in, anything creative, that's the time to have a conversation with them. And you can ask them, why do they think it's hard to make friends? Or have they just not found somebody that they connect with? And I think sometimes at school as well, it's when, you get overbearing children. I don't know why children have to be so nasty. I mean, honestly, school is just horrid. Um, it really is. And I don't think it's going to change. I just think it's this weird developmental phase that we all go through where we want to be liked. It's very important for children to be liked. We want to fit in. If somebody doesn't fit in and they don't feel good about themselves, they mean to the kids that maybe seem more vulnerable or that are shyer, or there's always this picking thing. So I think it's important to try and find out what is behind not being able to make friends and then to encourage them. But don't make the situation worse by um, what's the word I'm looking for? By enabling them. Because often what we do, I remember I worked with one parent and their child, and this child had started hiding himself away, and he wouldn't go out. He wouldn't get out his room. He came out his room to bath, shower, eat. He didn't go to school. She completely enabled him. So it was months and months and months and months. And that just makes it worse. You rather want to find strategies to help them. So if, for instance, your child likes a certain activity and you say, well, let's go along and see what that's like. I'll go with you. And then you go with them, you stay with them. And then you can see whether they're liking it, if there's somebody else there that they connect with. And then you go back with them and you go back, but you leave a little earlier every single time. You stay maybe for the first time, the whole time, then you stay for 50 minutes instead of 60, then for 30. Remember when you went to school and you had to, I don't know if they still do it. I know that they did it with my grandchildren, where you kind of take them to school and you stay for a little bit and then you leave. So you do that sort of thing, and then you encourage them and you build their confidence and you say to them, you know what, you make such a great friend and you such a lovely person and you're so kind. So you really, really want to boost their self-confidence, and you want to boost their self-talk, because I think a lot of times, not just children, but adults do it as well. Our self-talk is what says to us, you're not a good friend, or nobody wants to be your friend, nobody wants to talk to you. And you want to change that around, because if you don't change it around, that's the talk that your child is going to keep saying to themselves over and over and over. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the more they listen to that voice that it's telling them that they're not a good friend or that nobody wants to be their friend, then they will believe that, and it will hold them back from wanting to make friends with people. So make sure that you encourage really good self-talk, and that you keep telling them and remind them of friends that they have had in the past, and also encourage them and say, you know what, sometimes we only need 1 or 2 friends. We don't need a whole bunch of friends. Um, it's just important that they get out there, start believing in themselves, building their confidence, and you can help them to do that. Right, so that is all for today. If you want to write in and have any questions that you want answered about your child's behavior, about the emotions, anything that you're concerned about, anything you're worried about, the link is below. You can just click on it. It's Ask Deb, and you can submit your question. You can stay completely anonymous. You can make up a fake name. It doesn't matter, as long as you put in your email address, so that I can ping you an email across to say, listen, your question is being answered on this particular video. So as long as you do that, please also can I ask that you include an age, because there's different problems and different ways of handling it based on children's ages, and sometimes even on gender as well. You don't have to give their gender, but sometimes boys behave very differently to girls. And then obviously we have non-binary children as well. So you don't have to put in the gender, but if you can put in the age, that will be very helpful. Okay, until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye for now.